The synopsis of the first presentation actually goes like this. Volatility of stock market prices and returns on the Nigerian stock market has been a major concern to all the market operators, all the market stakeholders, the investors, the analysts, the brokers, regulators. It's actually a big concern to SEC right now. And the understanding of your level of volatility in the stock market will naturally be useful in the determination of the cost of capital and in the evaluation of asset allocation decisions. Policy makers therefore rely on market estimates of volatility as a barometer for the vulnerability of financial markets. But the question is, if you have been part of the capital market, if you are an investor today, would the period of crisis away from the capital market? The tension right now at the capital market, will it make you stay away from investment, or will it make you even take more advantages or more opportunities at the stock market? So that's the synopsis. And of course, our learning outcomes. At the end of this learning intervention, participants should be able to discuss the capital markets. Right. Then to explain how investors and investors are affected of crisis. The entire world is in a flux. Whether we deny or we don't deny it, the entire world is in a flux and is affecting virtually every place. The entire world rose up to COVID-19. And in this hall, there is still the evidence of COVID-19. And we have seen COVID-19 in virtually every aspect of our lives. The capital market inclusive. So we want to look at that, explain how investment and investors are affected in a period of crisis. Then you should be able to appraise share volatility during global financial crisis. Recognize investors make in a period of crisis, then identify investment strategies in a period of crisis. Of course, the content therefore will just be, overview of the investors in a period of crisis, share volatility during global financial crisis, mistakes investors make in a period of crisis, investment strategies in a period of crisis. Introduction. The current global financial crisis has been on for some time. I'm sure we were all familiar with the 2008 global financial crisis in the entire world. Market. And of course, the capital market operates like a global village, just like one sport village. What happens in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is going to affect, the Lagos Stock Exchange. Whatever happens in New York Stock Exchange is going to affect the Singaporean stock market. So the global financial crisis has been. The new normal has come. The world economy is facing its worst financial crisis. As a matter of fact, since the Great Depression, really, there is what we call heightened uncertainty. There is what we call, very huge necessity for changes in the way we do things. And this global financial crisis is continuous. It's not something that is going to change. As a matter of fact, when the COVID-19 came, we thought it was going to go also immediately. And as soon as it was going, other crises began to come. Even not only in Nigeria, but all over the world. In America, we saw George Floyd, murdered, and that also up a lot of affected even in the United States. In Nigeria, we had NSAS, and the NSAS is not even really ended yet too. So these are all crises that affected the way we do our investments in the capital markets. So the stock market is interrelated everywhere. And that is why we even really need to know this capital market. What is it? As I mentioned before, of course, I'm not talking those who are ignorant about it completely. But the mandate is to let you know the overview of the capital market and how it actually really functions, so that we know how to manage our shares if we have, and how to manage shares for our companies, or to actually readjust our portfolios in the stock market. Now, of course, we know that the percentage of ownership that you have in every organization is called shares. So shares actually give you an opportunity to become a shareholder. So share a percentage of ownership of a company or a financial asset. Investors who own shares are known as shareholders. These shares are units of equity ownership interest in a company. Share assets providing for equal distribution in any residual profits, especially in form. Your shares represent equity stocks, which could be common shares or preferred shares. When organizations want to raise capital, one of the best ways to do that is to willing investors. Capital now explained. Capital is a term for financial assets such as funds held in deposit accounts or funds obtained in the special financial sources, financing sources. It can be held through financial assets or raised from debt or equity financing. Capital form of money or other assets owned by a person or organization or available for a purpose such as starting a company, investing. Capital markets, therefore, are the nurseries where capital investment is nurtured. Companies require fast and effective to capital to set the stage for their business growth. Capital is a valuable hand to business. Capital market offers individuals, companies, and investors the ability to create wealth, boost productivity, provides valuable goods and services that lead to appreciating and financing financial assets growing. So capital market is a place where buyers and sellers can interact and transact their financial security. There's debentures, debt instruments, bonds, derivative instruments like the futures, like option swaps, like exchange transfer funds, and so on and so forth. And it's basically divided into two. You have the primary market, where it was time for companies through IPOs. Secondary market, which is using investors to exchange. You see, you're already an investor, you go to the secondary market to buy more or to sell what you have. But if you want fresh, then you go to the primary market. So capital markets in Nigeria or anywhere in the world is primary market and secondary market. Now, in the primary market, there are stakeholders. Just like you have stakeholders in the secondary market also. The stakeholders in the primary market are the corporations who want to raise capital, want to raise funds, raise money, especially through the issuance of common stock. Right. And the actors also that supervise these IPOs. So you have in the primary market the corporations, you have the public accounting firms, Then you have the fund managers, the brokers, those ones that sell on behalf of organizations that investors can actually access in order to investments. Then in the secondary market also, sorry, I'm a little bit fast because I've been asked to just stay here for 50 minutes, right? So, and so many things are there to be covered. Now, the players in the secondary market, the stakeholders there, they are investment banks. And don't forget that this is not raising fresh capital, really. It is exchanging the capital that have been raised before. There are people that want to transfer their shares. There are people that want to sell their shares. There are people that want to buy more, and all that and all that. So that is the secondary market. The capital market instruments are the common stocks, which is ordinary shares. You have the preference shares, the one that take priority over dividend payment. You have cumulative, preferred stocks, the one that even if the company cannot pay now, you understand, will have to be paid out of future profits. Preferred stocks, you have participating preferred stocks, the one that participate in both the equity, the participate in dividends, and also participate in the profits after the dividend is paid. Then you have the participating preferred stocks too. Then you have convertible preferred stocks, to ordinary shares, maybe in the name, on agreements with the organizations. Then you have the instruments. These actually are loans. All those are also available in the capital market. Right. Capital market facilitates economic development. Of course, this goes without saying. There is no need to re-emphasize that, because the private sector is the engine growth of that sector, is the engine growth of the country. And if that is, and it is, therefore the strength of the capital market is actually the strength of the economy. The economy actually is directly proportional to the growth of the capital market. So when you see any market, then you will also see the economy that is dragging, the economy that is tanking down. Right. So the capital markets are a network of specialized financial institutions, series of mechanisms, processes, and infrastructure that in various ways facilitate the bringing together of suppliers and users of medium to long-term capital. Capital markets connect monetary sector with the real sector, which is the sector of the economy concerned with the production of goods and services. Of course, organizations in the society are distributors of goods and services. For instance, the PZ, will bring input together, add value to it, then create all the products that are used domestically, the bathing soap and so on and so forth. And in order to be able to create these, every organization will need capital, will need funds. And so the capital market now provides a platform for such funds to be made available, to organizations to use to create value for the country. So the terminals of market efficiency. Market efficiency is a market that is run basically and only through the forces of supply and demand. In other words, there is no manipulation. It's the forces of supply that is controlling what happens in that market. So that the elementary, fundamental law of economics is that when you have a flux, when you have a demand for a particular good, then it might create scarcity. So when you're talking about market efficiency, we're talking about the capital forces of demand and the forces of supply dictating what goes on in that market. And really, you only find such market regulators or stakeholders in the market. There was a crisis of 2007, 2008 that hit Nigeria. So I'm sure some of you that were in banks then know how bank operators actually manipulated the capital market at that time. And at the end of the day, the capital market just collapsed. As a matter of fact, the stock price of First Bank so much crashed that almost everyone wanted to sell their stock at that time, right? And this is because the market had become inefficient because of manipulations from all the stakeholders in the market. So if you, in Nigeria, for instance, if you want to know how efficient we are in the capital market, then you look at all these determinants. Number one, the market debt. Number two, you look at the access that we have to foreign exchange. Access that we have to pound sterling. You know, you look at the tax and the regulatory right, extremely very saturated. This is very unfriendly now. And as a matter of fact, I actually delivered a lecture somewhere and I said I hope that the tax not tax all this out. Right. The tax and regulation, the transparency. The very cornerstone of corporate governance is transparency. You know, transparency, disclosure, and transparency. How is the market disclosing information to regulators, you know, to investors, to those that are actually operating in that sector? You know, so it's extremely very important. Then capacity of local investors, you know, the availability of notable funds in the society, you know, availability of savings, encouragement to save. Are people really saving now? With the current policies in the banking sector, I think, you know, a new BOFID is just coming out, and there are so many things now that is going to be affected. Then the question is, will people be encouraged? Right now, many people are being discouraged to save, and that means when people don't save, then there's scarcity. When there is no notable funds, then organizations cannot have access to pay. And if they don't have, we all know the consequences of effects on the market of this. That could go to increase unemployment rate, inflation rate, you know, increase so many things, machine breakdown, and the organizations not being able to put the machine back to work, you know, because key resources will not become scarce. As a matter of fact, this thing that we just discussed very briefly here is extremely very scary in Nigeria, because down the line, in the next 6 months, in the next 1 year, we begin to see the effect we have done, you know, in the past. Right now, the government is just looking for loans all over the world. Of course, servicing loan, and when you service loan, then you know the implication also upon our economic development, right? So you have macroeconomic opportunity. Well, economic, when you're talking about macroeconomic indices, you're talking about the way the entire economy is being affected. What are the factors affecting us? You know, the pestless factors, political factors, economic factors, the social, cultural, educational, demographic factors, legal factors, compliance factors. Realize now that so much compliance, the Financial Reporting Council code has the karma has come, and you realize people don't know that the 2016 Financial Reporting Code was actually mandatory, headed by Obasi, and it was stepped down. That no, we don't want a mandatory Financial Reporting Council code. We want voluntary principles, right? But then the new FRC now gave us what looked like voluntary, but is not voluntary. Because right there you will see apply and explain. If it is voluntary, it should have been apply or explain. In other words, you pick, and then you tell us why you are not applying the one you didn't apply. But now it's apply everything and explain how you have applied them. Right? So you have mandatory NICOM code, insurance. There are certain things that if an insurance company doesn't do, you cannot receive a license to practice the next year. You have PENCOM code. Those are all sectorial codes that are almost mandatory in their own respects. council code that is also mandatory. Then you have the CAMA that is actually completely and absolutely mandatory. So when compliance regime is harsh, you understand, it reverberates on the economy and is a pity. Enforceability markets master agreement. So these are actually of right. What is the primary function of the capital market, therefore? Is to bring buyers and sellers together into a fair environment where they execute their trades together in a controlled environment so that there won't be manipulation of one stakeholder interest and another stakeholder's interest. The essence of corporate government is actually that in every institution, in enterprise, you have so many stakeholders who have different interests. How do we align these interests as closely as dicing, each other's interests? The measure of inherent strength in the economy. It is one of the best of a spectrum of investors, which in turn encourages capital creation in the economy. So very of savings to finance long-term facility of securities, encourage wide ranging of ownership of productive assets. Productive assets means the assets that the companies that put value goods to the society. And many people think, I may be jumping out a little time. You see, there are investors who would rather stay with productive assets. In other words, they're looking for manufacturers they can tie their shares to. Why? Because if anything goes wrong, they are stuck. Right. And one of the wisdom of to live with you now, really invest in companies. Don't invest in companies. No. Do you understand? You must be able to research out your company before you invest in any company. Otherwise, when things are changing, you won't be able, your information about the company is scanty, and because it's scanty, you won't be able to make it. Whether to hold on to your shares or to sell off your shares, because there are times that you need to just sell off your shares and move on. And there are times that you just hold on to your shares, whether it's not about the media news that should move you to taking decisions about any company. The media news can cry wolf. You understand? Things might just completely be down with the company, but it's temporary. In 1994, Intel had Intel had a Pentium operating system problem also, and it's temporary. The stock price tanked. As little as a managing director leading a company can affect the share prices, right? As little as there is board squabbles, board quarrels and all that, and if it is released to the market, it can actually affect it. But if you are in a company you understand, right? Read the news beyond the newspapers. Is this something that is there for a long time? If you know it's there for a long time, then you leave. If it's not for a long time, you don't leave. So exactly that's what happened to Intel in 1994. And just a few months after, it came back on its feet. And those that stayed then immediately just had almost 100% capital appreciation. Right. So quick valuation of financial instruments, shares and debentures, facilitates transaction settlement as per the definite time schedules, offering insurance against market price risk through derivative trading, improvement in the effectiveness capital allocation with the competitive price. Investors invest in a period of crisis. This is the World Bank Group Vice President at the wake of COVID-19. He said it, and I believe it's really very pertinent. He says, this is a deeply sobering outcome. This is likely to leave long-lasting scars and pose major global challenges. Our first order of business is to address the global health and economic emergency. Beyond that, the global community must unite to find ways to reverse a recovery as possible to prevent more people from falling into poverty and unemployment. The swift and massive shock pandemic and short have plunged the global economy contraction. Right, the forecast is that global economy by about 5. I got this right because right now it's going to be worse. You see, the pandemic affected almost every sector. Talking about airlines, travel. You see, they lost trillions of dollars this year. Talking about health, talking about hospitality. The hospitality in the world before, I believe, before it's restored back to normal. Number one, the pandemic would have completely destroyed. So there will be an assurance that they are safe to travel. Last year, I don't even really know how many times I went to Dubai for training, but this year not. And that is exactly what Nigerians have been waiting all from, especially in education, in the training. It's not that I love to go there, but if that is where I want to talk now, because I'm a talker, right? But then, what I'm actually saying affected the tourism, affected the event centers. I don't think anybody will want to do any event now and begin to have about 1,000 people, 1,500 people in the place at the same time. That can be restored. And so we're actually in a prolonged period of crisis. What all these things mean is that the capital market is not immune. And so you as investors must accept that reality. When COVID-19 came, it started first, like every other thing. Most counters talk about these laws, this level of loss. He said it usually starts with denial, right? After denial, then it moves down like that. At times, it gets to depression. It gets to so many things until it finally now gets to acceptance. Now is if you have accepted it in the areas where it's affecting you, how do you? Coronavirus has come to shrink down the world economy, and it's not only coronavirus really. There are so many areas of crisis. Now, Wirecard in Germany just collapsed almost unannounced. A very healthy company. Boohoo just collapsed. So many. Despite corporate governance principles, despite corporate governance strategies that they think they have put in place, companies are collapsing. So there's a period of crisis for everyone. Because these things are so, the investors are losing confidence by the day. One of the critical problems with corporate failure is the loss of investors' confidence. And of course, that when investors lose their confidence, what happens? Capital take flight in companies. And that is why many people really now are more risk averse than ever before. Many don't want to, but I can tell you most times the time to actually go near, many people are afraid of going. The best time to actually take advantage of is when others, because it doesn't matter how it is, it will still rise again. For the capital market to remain the same. That will represent let me skip this. 19 passes. If restrictions on movement, is extended or reintroduced or whatever it is, businesses might be hard now to service debt. Again, as I explained to you, downside scenario, global growth could shrink, by almost 8%. Now there is a crash, there is a mini crash this year in April. We call it the 2020 stock market crash, as a result of the coronavirus crash. The crash in the global stock markets in financial history, and the most devastating crash since the Wall Street crash of 1929. So the crash now, even though it has gone back to the bull stage, but it is signaling that every investor needs to be on alert, right, to move your investments around. So the period of this, for time's sake, let me skip this, I think I've mentioned. Let's just quickly look as we conclude now. The investment strategies you probably could put in place when the world is in a flux as it is right now. I don't know any word we can use to bring it back. When people complain about inflation, or when people complain about price, I've asked people before, I said, since we were born at 1 year, when prices are actually cheaper than the previous year, that the news is that this year prices are now actually big, or everything is just normal, everything is just good. As long as human beings run the imperfections, right? And the only thing we need to do is to recognize that there will be imperfection. The youth are clamoring, they want to take over now. How I wish that everybody and let them take over for 2 weeks, so that for 2 weeks, right? And is Warren Buffett. I actually recommend for any investor, would-be investor, to go and buy Warren Buffett books and study it. The guy is about 90 years old now, and I think presently is the fourth, richest man in the world according to Forbes. And the only thing that has helped him actually is investing in the capital market, and he has a lot of needs at many of his books. And it's very important, if you want to stay in the investment market, go and buy all his books and begin to read them. You're going to get wisdom. So he's the one that says this thing. The financial world is in a mess globally. Actually, the man kept quiet, right, for a long time for this coronavirus. He didn't say anything at all. When he broke his silence, this is what he said. He said, the financial world is in a. I have been. A simple rule dictates my buying. Fearful when others are greedy. In other words, when everybody is just going after a particular stock, then don't go. Right. It says, and be greedy when others are fearful. Most certainly, fear is now widespread, gripping even seasoned investors. And because of this, what investors are now doing? Market, which in itself is panic. When you take decisions in panic, it's likely to be wrong decisions. So, and most certainly, fear is now widespread, gripping even seasoned investors. To be sure, investors are right to be wary of highly leveraged businesses in weak competitive positions. Because of what has happened now, many companies are now highly geared. Now, you as charter secretaries, one of the things I expect you to do before you even invest in financial ratios, check the gearing. Your investment in an item, how will it service the loan? Right. That means you are not likely going to see dividends or likely going to see profit in some few years to come. If it's highly, can actually also collapse under the weight of debts, under the weight of loan. And of course, when it collapses, your shares also collapse if your ordinary shares. As a matter of fact, in Nigeria, it doesn't even matter which shares you hold. You understand? The company collapses, it collapses because the shares. Right. The worst you do, you go to court. For 10 years, you are still in court, fighting for your rights. So the best thing is to make sure that you check very well before you put your intentions. And as charter secretaries again, this is our realm, this is our own area. So no one should deceive us. Find out, can I see the financial statements, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years, and do some kind of comparative study. You understand? Do your ratios. See how money is coming in, see how money is going out, see how sales are going. Look at how consistent sales of the company is. Look at all those indices before you launch your so the investors, right, entities, but fears regarding the long-term prosperity of the nation's sound make no sense. Fears regarding the long-term nation's many sound make no sense. Costs as a but most major companies will be setting costs at 20 say again 25. It doesn't, but the ratio also will inform you is going to look good tomorrow. Infrastructural problems, environmental problems. I went to a company called GZI to trade. GZI is it's not very big in the right. But there are a lot of things. One of the things I saw is actually operating very bad. Now, I don't know whether the government has it from a gate, that company, which should have been maybe 5 or 7 minutes, took probably almost 5 minutes. Very bad. When I got there, I saw that they are not to go buy this kind of vehicles in this kind of way. No, such things are very important. Right. Okay. See through your stock management. If this is the place they ask me to small, it's important that you follow in your investment decisions. Investment decisions is how you manage your stock. That I want to also look at, even though we have investments that almost is results immediately, the most right. Investments usually so that's number one. Two is that sound management. Don't put all your investment in portfolio, because once that basket collapses, all investments you have also go down. things system. The system as well. Stay with us. 4. Do not think position for too long. Yeah. Problem, one particular bank, actually the managing director of a bank became access market because those that want the investment there for a market, a ruin. So if then do not believe that it is market. No one before particular investment you have removed it. Before a particular investment have seen have seen very different fights over things. One you see, I wouldn't have done that. I want to buy a house. I don't understand them. Relationship surely got sour as a result. So don't take, do not give it even for friends because it depends on your needs. What you make from this market on right. Let me see. And actually also predict the next phase, they can predict the phase. Right. Then exercise vigilance over every when you are in the expenses. Because you don't want to be under pressure. You know, to go and withdraw your investments before it begins to leak. If you're borrowing, there are many people that borrow money to invest. It's key to do that, especially when you don't mind the interest rate. I mean, with interest is of 23% or 25% in order to buy investment, what would the investment yield? Right. So, let me already your profits. Invest profits. Just set by your own standards. The consistent and paid in stock investment, patience is very key, very cardinal. Right? It's great talent or effort. Some take time. You can't do in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. That's more than smart. So, be patient. Then at times in a period of crisis, you now considering other sectors, maybe the reset. But then if you also understand the reset of the moment, the purpose come to you and you cannot talk. It's very risky. Right. Okay. Know when to quit for overcome your fear. Risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. So know what you're doing. Invest in quality businesses. Check. Right. In I think in 1990, these financial institutions that came up bring 10,000. What's now all those time? You know that time. Okay. One of them gave him employment. Is the wish so you don't need to tell you we are going to go to ICSAN. Right. And then a few months after, the company collapsed. And the case said, thank you. I said, no, don't even thank you because it's not from any knowledge at all. It's just simple. And when you end this financial whatever, the only asset they have is computer. You that has access all over Nigeria, all over the world. Just so you look at businesses to invest in. Don't because they are paying very at times it's not a high premium that should know you. Always consider the long term in your investments. If you want short term, I don't think the stock market is a place you should go there. Otherwise, you can your pressure. Then all big talks, if you don't work, now Buffett says this: the Great Recession has been a big time for investors, so you don't run away in a period of crisis. That's the summary. The Great Recession has been an time because climate fear is their best friend. You know, for climate about fear is the best friend. Those commentators are all in a head of me to measure. May have been shown for fake promises. Right. Like, I don't believe anyone knows what the market is going to do tomorrow, next week, next month, this year. I know America is going to move forward over time, but I don't know for sure. And we learned this on September 10, 2021. And we learned it a few months in terms of value. Anything can happen in terms of market. That's why I always seek knowledge from those who know. To know that it pays to have professional approach. It pays to seek knowledge from others, seek knowledge from those who right. Then optimism. If I want to do anything and I've been convinced that this, I'm always go there optimistically, not pessimism. It says a person not be able investor. Then informed action. You know, from knowledge. There's a story I had. It's actually true story. In America, Florida, was a who received license from the government, right? And oil, and he received the license and he bought a large size of, began to experiment for oil and And I think about 7 years he got tired. He had gone so indebted and all that. So he decided to pause. And he sold the license. And the guy that came in, when he now a professional, a geologist. And when he brought the guy there, and they just looked around, and the guy now moved all the equipment to the right place. Just 3 days after I moved it, all began to come out. The difference is knowledge. The difference is knowledge. Because it is only after you know that you can make informed. Nobody makes informed decision, without knowledge. When investing is your friend, your enemy. People who buy for non-valuable reasons are likely to sell for non-value. Anyway, if you buy, we have to sell things you need. These are all from Warren Buffett. Let me skip all these. So this actually is for you. So many. Warren Buffett also said the basic ideas of investing are use the market's fluctuation advantage, margin of safety. Us 100 years from us to basic ideas of investing. Look at next. Use the market's fluctuations to your advantage. Margin of safety. Right. That's the guy. Going in that too. Invest in productive assets. That is where you're aid to a productive investment asset. Right. Cash is a bad investment. In other words, what do you do with cash in your bank? Right. Many people have, and it's wasted. So what he's saying is just learn how to, not necessarily 1%, I think 1.5% interest rate. Right. Too much diversification. Right. Avoid the herd mentality that everybody is doing it and you are moving to